Hey guys, it's me Simo Orahara, and in this video we're going to talk about Ichigo's Quincy power and why he doesn't use Quincy techniques like the other Quincy's do, even though he has a Quincy power, and despite that Ichigo remains a unique character in the end. It is interesting guys to know that he has several different powers within him that are quite distinct from each other. But before we start guys, I need your reaction. Don't forget to support this video by your likes and comments to increase its reach so other fans can watch it. And as always, big thanks to the ones who support Simo, either the memberships of my channel or on Patreon. Thank you guys so much. For example, Ichigo's father comes from a world that we could call the world of the death. And Ichigo's father wasn't someone who lived in the real world and was then sent to the soul society. He was a noble soul in that world. He met a girl from the world of the living, Masaki, who herself wasn't an ordinary human, since she was also a Quincy and from a noble bloodline. Therefore guys, to answer this question, we need to understand how each race power works, how Shinigami powers function, and how Quincy power work, and the significant differences between them. If we start with the Shinigami, it's known that most of their strength and techniques rely on their internal power, their spiritual energy. For example, spiritual power is fundamental for using Kido and Zanpakuto. The stronger the spiritual power, the more powerful the Shinigami. Zaraki was born with high spiritual power, the same with Aizen Sasuke. And also we can have some weak Shinigami with low spiritual power. Their techniques, no matter how much they master them, won't be as strong as someone with great spiritual power. For example, when it comes to Zanpakuto, it starts as a simple, ordinary sword, known as an Asauchi, without a name. And for a Shinigami to use a Zanpakuto, they can use it in battle, they must reflect their soul into the sword, allowing the formation of the Zanpakuto entity. And then the Shikai and Bankai are unlocked. As for Kido guys, only those with significant spiritual power can master and learn this art, which involve manipulating their internal spiritual power to form various Kido techniques, whether offensive Hado or defensive Bakodo. And as you can see guys, Shinigami in battle depend primarily on their spiritual power or spiritual pressure Ryatsu. And even those who struggle to control their spiritual power, like in using Kido, can fight with their Zanpakuto, relying heavily on their spiritual power. Example of this are Zaraki and Ichigo. They lack fundamental skills in Kido, yet they are powerful due to their spiritual power and the Ryatsu they have. With the Ryatsu they can unify abilities and concentrate their attacks without needing the complex techniques that require mastering. However guys, Ichigo has shown that he isn't the type to have fine control over his spiritual power due to several reasons, one being his nature and another being the fact that he awakened his Shinigami power quickly, resulting in poor control. And we have example of this, such as when Ichida Yuryu pointed out that Ichigo couldn't control his spiritual power, or when Kako told him to release his spiritual power into those balls and Ichigo struggled to do so. Now guys, imagine that Ichigo had difficulty with just spiritual power. How do you think he would do when it comes to Quincy powers, which works entirely differently? Quincy powers rely on gathering Rishi from the surroundings to form their bows and arrows and perform other Quincy abilities. And Yuryu explained this very well guys in chapter 49, saying that Shinigami materialize their internal spiritual power into their Zanpakuto, using it from the inside out. And this goes very well with how Shikai works, where the Shinigami channel their inner power into the sword, allowing them to fight with the Zanpakuto's abilities. Meanwhile guys, the Quincy's must gather the external Rishi and merge it with their spiritual power to form most of the techniques we have seen. So do you think Ichigo could gather Rishi and merge it with his spiritual power, which he can barely control? It's possible he could do so eventually, but Ichigo only recently discovered his Quincy powers, so I don't think he can gather Rishi to form a bow and arrow yet. Also, this doesn't suit Ichigo's fighting style, which primarily involves close combat with his Zanpakuto, while the Quincy's fight with long-range arrows. Of course guys, I'm talking about Ichigo himself using Quincy abilities, because we have the Osan, the manifestation of the Quincy power within him. He helped him using Quincy abilities unconsciously, like stopping him bleeding using BLEACH against Zaraki and also against Yuaba.
That's why guys, I feel that Ichigo could have learned some techniques from the Osan instead of just being given the Zanpakuto and left alone. And to understand how Quincy powers could evolve a character's abilities when combined with other powers, we should look at Hikone. Hikone is a fusion of multiple powers and uses them harmoniously. For example, Hikone uses defensive BLEACH to strengthen their body and stop bleeding, and offensive BLEACH to enhance their strike with Hakuda. They can even form the traditional Quincy bow and arrow for attacks. Hikone also uses Herinkyaku for movement and can mix it with Sonido and Shimpo. Imagine if Ichigo could also harness his Quincy powers along with his Shinigami power. I'm not suggesting he uses the bow and arrow, but only BLEACH, which is useful for both defensive and offensive, especially since he inherited it from his mother, Masaki, who was said by Ichigo to have had an exceptionally strong BLEACH. But in the end guys, I believe Ichigo doesn't think of combat in this way. He has already chosen the path he wanted to follow, and the Osan understood this very well, the path of the Shinigami. Thus, the Osan's Quincy power in Ichigo has become a part of his Zanpakuto, merging with the Zanpakuto's abilities. And another thought that I had guys about Ichigo being a Quincy is, what if he used only his Quincy power in a battle against a hollow of any kind? Would that hollow be erased from existence? Since this is what the Quincy powers do, erase hollows from existence. And this fact guys made me think of Ichigo's Zanpakuto as a unique one, combining between two different powers and how each one of them works. Maybe this is how the Zanpakuto of Ryu was. I wouldn't say Zanpakuto, since this term was born in the Sword Society, but let's say a sword, the sword of Ryu. I do think Ryu has a sword that has all the three powers, the Shinigami, Quincy and Fullbring, where he used them together in fights. That's why I think Ichigo can be in that place if he trained hard to control all of his powers. The thing that Ichigo has and Ryu doesn't is the hollow power, and this point itself what made Ichigo suffer in controlling his powers. So I think guys, all of this, we can see it in the Hell arc, where we can see the full potential of Ichigo's power after 12 years. As for now guys, I think it's very good for Ichigo to fight using the Shinigami powers, while Quincy powers remains primarily defensive in BLEACH or something like that. In the end guys, what do you think about Ichigo's Quincy power in general? Tell me guys your opinions in the comments, and see you guys in my next video.